if we're coming from an operating platform, a personal foundation of knowing that resilience and healing and regeneration are built into the very life force that we came into this life with, that's a whole different starting ground. Okay, so Adek just walked you through how all the billions of people on the planet are creating their own unique perception of reality via their own mind, via their own thoughts. And that's a moving target. It's changing all the time within us, day to day, moment to moment, and also from person to person. In a way, he's explaining the uniqueness of people and what is different about us in a good way, but also sometimes in a not so helpful way. But what I'm going to talk about in this video is what's the same about us. What actually unifies us? Where are we all one? Where are we all the same? And that's that deeper level that I referred to in the opening to this module, is that yes, all people have their perceptions. All people are born into families that have their own unique way of thinking. And some of us pick those up within our family. Some of them fight against them. Oh, because my family's like this, I'm not going to be like this. So there's this amazing thing that's going on in the, what I would call like after we're born part. like once we're born and we start being raised, there's things like family and society and culture, and there's some degree of that we pick up, there's some degree of it we ignore, there's some degree of it we just don't even realize is there. And so that's all the kind of after the fact of people being born and being raised and developing their own unique personal thought systems. But before that, there's something that's kind of more fundamental. It's like it's in the basic operating system of all humans, and it's true of all humans. And I've seen this to be true of all humans that I've worked with over the last 15 years, no matter where I go in the world, no matter what culture, language, race, gender. The following things I'm going to point out are universally true for humans with a capital H. And actually, I think it's that it's universally true for all things in nature. Resilience, healing, regeneration are innate to all living things. So in a way, the life force is within us. And because the life force is within us, or within all things in nature, there's a striving to heal. There's a striving to survive. There's a striving to fix what is imbalanced and achieve homeostasis. And you can actually see this in a lot of examples in nature. Like my family, it lives in California, and wildfires are very common there. And there was one that actually came quite close to where my parents live. Just before our wedding. And there was a tinge of fear that we might have to cancel our wedding because the property where we were going to get married was on fire. But fortunately, thankfully, we're very grateful that did not happen. But I did notice when we did fly out there for our wedding, about a week after this fire had ended, there was scorched black earth everywhere you looked for miles on the drive through the mountains up to where my parents live. And honest to goodness, within a couple of weeks, you were already seeing green shoots of new plant life coming through this black earth. And it really shocked me. I remember saying to Adek, wow, look, there's black, and then there's this new life already bursting through. Or if you live in a city, if you live in an urban environment, I've always found it amazing to see how trees come up through the concrete. They just find a way. They like break through. And we know this to be true of children when we see them. They're so resilient, and there's this amazing capacity to heal in humans, to get over things, to return to a state of well-being or a state of health, or even on a physical level. Like I know it's really silly, but I have a paper cut right now. It was a deep one. It was one of those that really hurt. I don't have to worry, even though I see the skin is broken and I can see a little bit of red of the blood poking through there. I don't have to worry about it healing. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to manually in my mind tell my body, heal, heal finger, heal, because I know it's built into my physiology that on a cellular level, my body is doing what it needs to do to heal, because the body is resilient. The body is designed for life. The body is designed to have things happen to it, but sort of kick all of these mechanisms into gear to do what it needs to do to return to health and balance, right? I also remember learning in school about the lungs of a smoker. I don't know if you all had this in your education, but we had that like pickled lung in a jar that they would bring, the smoker's lung that was black, to show us all how disgusting it was and that you shouldn't smoke. It was very effective. Well, sort of. But what I remember also being shocked by was not just how disgusting this lung looked, but that apparently within hours of quitting smoking, your body begins to repair, your lungs begin to repair. So things like the carbon monoxide in your body begin to regulate and return to normal within hours, and then days. And then they said, within a week, things like your blood flow have improved and your oxygen levels have improved and yada yada, to the point that the lungs completely repair themselves. Even if you were a heavy smoker for years and years of your life, that the lungs will repair themselves beginning the moment you put down the last cigarette. And within a year, you can have completely healed lungs that are back to normal functioning or optimal functioning. And I just remember being surprised by the rapidness with which our body wants to return to health. Also, people who are currently learning about soil health and trying to address the carbon crisis and how do we draw down carbon out of the atmosphere to cool the heating climate, the heating planet. And one of the most hopeful things I've read about is regenerative agriculture, which is basically playing to the strengths of nature, which is that nature is, in its very essence, regenerative. It will fix itself, basically. It will heal itself. We don't have to fix it all. We just have to stop doing what we're doing to damage it, and it will fix itself. It will heal itself, like the lungs, like the smoker's lungs. So quit smoking and the lungs will do the rest. You don't have to kind of go in with a repair team and go, oh, okay, how do we fix this part of the lung and that? But like the body's got that covered. Just stop doing the smoking part and you're good to go. And it's the same thing with soil health and our understanding of regenerative agriculture is that if we stop doing things like tilling and pouring enormous amounts of pesticides and herbicides onto the soil will heal itself. There's all of these mechanisms with the microorganisms in the soil that will naturally go into a healing process. It will regenerate itself so we can have healthy soil again. So all of this just points to something that's incredibly hopeful and helpful to understand about ourselves as a part of nature and humanity when looking at the brokenness of some of the systems that are in place, the problems that we're trying to solve, is that if we're coming from an operating platform, a personal foundation of knowing that resilience and healing and regeneration are built into the very life force that we came into this life with, that's a whole different starting ground. Health and well-being are a default. Like, they're already there. We don't have to manufacture them. And that's true of our psychological health, our mental well-being, is that we're born okay. We're born mentally well, emotionally well. We're born fully intact. Now, The reason I feel that's a point worth making is because there's a thought system or an assumption that's become very pervasive that that's something we have to work hard to achieve, or that there's certain people that have that and certain people that don't. And I don't want to, go above my pay grade here or get out of my field of expertise or understanding. I don't want to get into an argument about things like chemical imbalances and psychological diagnoses, because I do think all of those things exist. But what I know to be true is that when people uncover, which means get out from under thought habits that have been laid on top of their well-being, they return to a default state of okayness. And we all do this on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis too. It's like you can be really angry and frustrated and annoyed about something, but there's a way in which that requires activation. That requires tension. It's almost like holding a weight. It's like you have to kind of work at being angry. You have to kind of fixate on and continue to focus on something to be actively upset or actively disturbed or actively distressed. Or even the word disease is a state of dis-ease. It's like there's some distortion there. There's some, again, imbalance there. But when people release, when they let go, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, but when the mind resets, it resets to a state of well-being. That's something that's already in people. It's natural. It's a default. Again, you can see it in children that they have moments of upset. They can get wildly angry, pissed off, or really, really sad. But those are the fluctuation from the norm. The norm is typically a state of contentment, a state of well-being, not happiness per se, but just presence. We are all one. We are all connected. And that brings a feeling of love with it. And until we have ideas that take root in our mind and spread, we feel that oneness. We feel that connection to life and to others and to nature, because we are it. Not because we decide we want to think that. It's because that is what's true. We get taught the other things. Notice when something really, something really big or scary or traumatic or just shocking happens in your life, it kind of like explodes your thought system for a minute, or sometimes for many, many, many minutes, even weeks and months. But when things that you thought were a certain way suddenly go and your thought system goes like this, those have been the times in my life where I have felt the most connected to others and to the life force and to nature and all things, because I didn't have my thought system in the way, creating this feeling of division or this feeling of separation. So one example that I actually talk about in depth in the book that I wrote was when I was 21 living in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I was held up at gunpoint. The moment that I realized that there was a man holding a gun to my head and that I could die in an instant if he decided to pull the trigger, I had this incredible experience of my thinking just going completely silent, which makes sense because what on earth would be helpful about my thinking in that moment? Like, most of the things I think about became extremely irrelevant very quickly. So I had this kind of moment of just being completely in the moment with no thinking in my head to distract me. And to my surprise, I got incredibly overwhelmed by this massive feeling of connectivity. And actually, because I had no thoughts in there separating me from the man holding the gun, from the sidewalk, from the tree, because though that takes thought. Just like I said, my son Teo talks to them all like they're all the same, because for him they are. In that moment, when I had no thinking, I had this incredibly profound experience of seeing no separation between me and the man holding the gun and that tree on the sidewalk. It just became this one continuous flow of energy. I literally had the experience of feeling like I don't know where I end or begin, or that tree ends or begins. Like, in a way, I could still feel the distant concept of a tree. I knew that that was a tree, but I couldn't see a separation. All I could see was one energy field. I know that sounds crazy, but that is truly what happened to me in that moment. And I know that the reason that happened to me is because I wasn't busy engaging in the noise of my typical thinking, the noise of that projector that Ada talked about, that's always creating an idea of life. And so without an idea of life, I was just in the raw essence of life.